we hack the code and flip the tag. Where cliches come to retire. Drop that beat, turn down to fire. Say what's real, make fears take a seat. Unconventional wisdom, dancing on your feet. Hey.
Hello and welcome to Unconventional Wisdom about conventional wisdom. I'm your host, Kim Miller-Hershon. I am so pleased to welcome Nick Jain today as my guest. And before I ask him his random question, let me just tell you a little bit about him. He is the co-founder of Eagle Rock CFO Services, and they help small businesses get elite financial advice without the Fortune 500 price tag. He graduated top of his class from Harvard Business School. He spent a decade as a professional investor, and he scaled 3 businesses to over $100 million across trucking, software, and e-commerce. He now works with companies doing 5 to 50 million to help them run leaner and grow smarter. And I'm just going to tell you, I think Nick is a very interesting guy. So before you learn more about why he's so interesting professionally, we are just dying to know Nick. So, secret, not so secret, Nick, which he did not say in his bio, is like a mass savant kind of guy, and he plays competitive professional poker. So, Nick, we are dying to know, what's the most you've ever won?
Sure. Just to be clear, I don't play professionally because I've got like a wife and a kid and a job, but I'm good enough to, and I'm good enough to make a living off of it if I wanted to. I just
Okay,
don't want to
right.
be playing poker 80 hours a week. So look, the most I've made in a single sitting is probably about $3,000 over about 8 or 9 hours.
Okay.
But almost every time I play, I make a couple $100 over a 8 to 12 hour session.
Okay. All right. You're not losing. And that is saying
No, I'm
something.
a consistent winner. I wasn't kidding when I said I could make a living off of it. I choose not to because there's better things for me to do in life.
There you go. And math is just something that came very naturally to you. Is that true?
Yes and no. Look, I think I'm better at math than a lot of people and have always been passionate about as a kid. I certainly am not a world-class genius at mathematics, so it is more natural than some, but certainly I'm not going to be on the next Beautiful Mind anytime soon.
Fair. Okay. All right. Obviously, you have been a part of many companies. You are now helping, again, like you said, these smaller companies really get elite financial services in some really, I think, innovative, interesting ways. What's one piece of conventional business wisdom that you followed early on only to realize that it was completely wrong for you?
Oh, there's a lot. Let's see. Okay, here's one. Conventional wisdom that you often hear when you are aspiring towards leadership positions is that you be yourself. Okay? Everyone tells you that advice. And it's wonderful, but like it turns out it's actually wrong, right? Unless you happen to be exactly the right personality type to be a CEO or a leader, turns out being yourself is often a recipe for disaster, or at least not for leadership. There are proven paths and personality types that are going to be much more successful in leadership positions, both in achieving them and then being successful once you're there. And for example, there's lots of things that are good about me, but there's lots of things that if I was my true authentic self would absolutely bite me in the butt as I progress in my career. So I can't be my authentic self 100%. I'm like 50% my authentic self and 50% what I should be.
Oh, how funny. Oh my goodness. You are giving me some really food for thought here and our listeners. So, would it follow along with what you're saying? I think what you're saying is you need to grow into leadership. If all it took was just to show up every day and just do whatever you felt like doing, then I would say that probably is a recipe for disaster. On the one hand, on the other hand, I guess I hold a belief, and I'm curious what you think, that you do need to be lead in a way that is authentic to you. But it also does not, for instance, one thing I come across all the time in the people that I coach is they don't want to have hard conversations, right? They want to be the good guy or the good gal or the good person all the time, right? And that I would say is a recipe for disaster in a company. I think that especially if you are the one who owns the company, people waste so much money on keeping people around for a long time who are really not right for the position because they just don't want to have the conversation. So I would say to that extent, I agree with you. I think sometimes you need to be a better version of yourself.
So I agree with leading with parts of you that are authentic, but I'll go an example. I'll give a very practical example. When I was in business school, they said, be your authentic self, right? That sounds like great, nice advice. It's what you hear in a lot of situations. You hear that on TV all the time. Lead, be authentic. But here's a practical example. Many people are introverts. Roughly about two-thirds of all people, so more than the majority of the population, tend to be introverts. Okay? Your authentic self is being introverted and quiet. Turns out there's a tremendous body of research that extroverts do better, not only to achieve leadership positions, but to be successful once they're there. So if your authentic self is an introvert, you are actually setting yourself up for failure. You at least have to fake being an extrovert in your professional life, right? So that's an area where conventional wisdom would, I think, do a disservice to many people who are naturally introverts. Again, that's the majority of the population. That's an area, by the way, I'm an extrovert by nature, so that one I can be perfectly authentic, but there's other areas where I have to be a little bit more or different than I would naturally like to be.
Although, what I would say, because again, I have also coached a lot of introverts who are leaders, is that they tend to do better one on one with people than they do in big groups and big crowds. So there are ways to set yourself up for success. But I would agree, as an extrovert, as I like to say about myself, not everybody needs to hear everything I think of, right? I don't have to express everything. And having some restraint around that, oversharing and all those things is also something that you have to learn. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, no disagreement there.
Yeah. Okay. So, as a successful leader, what's one thing that people assume that you have all figured out that underneath it all, you still wrestle with it?
Lots of things. I'll need to pick up a fun one. I think, for me at least, sticking with a decision after it's been made, even after all the analysis has been done, is difficult because I'm always constantly second guessing and thinking, not second guessing myself from a confidence perspective, but thinking about, okay, what if our assumptions going into this decision were wrong? What about the edge cases?
Yeah.
Did we really think about this right from the beginning? So I'm always constantly like worried and anxious, not because of a lack of that I did a bad job, but because I'm always thinking about what did we miss, right? It's that old joke or that old quote, the best laid plans of mice and men get and gang to glee, right? They often go awry because random stuff happens, and I'm always constantly thinking about, hey, what did we miss? And
Right.
on one hand, that's good, but like it causes a lot of anxiety.
I would agree with you. Like, the other thing that I think of around that is that, like, love innovation, love new ideas. And I think you're right. Like, sticking to a decision that you've made and letting it play itself out can be a very challenging thing to do. And knowing when you need to iterate, when you need to change course, but also like when you need to just stick with it and have some patience. Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard just sticking to it. And you said again, stuff that other people have figured out that I still struggle with, and that's definitely an area that I constantly struggle with.
Yeah. I was lucky enough to hear, I'm looking over here at my bookshelf. Bill McDermott wrote a book called Winner's Dream, and he was the president of the Americas of, I will tell you in a minute what his company was because I can't remember, but like huge multinational corporation. And I had the honor and privilege in a very small venue to hear him talk about his book. And one of the things that he talks about is making a really big decision. He got all his VPs and his EVPs together, and everybody, it was a Friday afternoon, and they just chomped it up He took all the input, he made a decision. It was a big, massive directional decision. And one of his EVPs came back on Monday and said, "Oh my God, I think you made the wrong decision, and here are the reasons why." And he said, the time for that discussion was Friday. The decision's been made, and we are moving forward, regardless of whatever your concerns are. And I just thought that was an amazing part of leadership, right? Like just really being able to stick to your guns in such a like strong way. I do think that's really hard. Yeah. So,
Yeah, I would struggle with that. I would struggle with that. Yeah.
yeah. If you could rewrite the rule book on leadership, what's one outdated belief that you would throw away and what would you replace it with?
I don't know if it's a rule, but I think there is a perception, at least in popular media, that leaders tend to be these incredibly charismatic leaders that give great speeches. And that's not actually correlated with success. The best leaders tend to be very cool-minded, do a lot of analysis and thinking. And I'm not talking math necessarily, but like they do a lot of thinking and then they make decisions very carefully. And often those decisions tend to be incremental decisions, not grand decisions. So on TV, you see a charismatic leader give a great speech and make a big decision that they're going to bet the entire farm on one big idea or one big product, right? That's not how most great leaders actually perform in practice. They tend to be a lot more methodical, a lot more careful, and a lot more incrementalist.
So, Nick, I'd love for you to apply that to the business that you are currently running. So, how long have you been running this business?
Sure. So we launched Eagle Rock, my business
Eagle
partner and I
Rock,
launched Eagle Rock's CFO just 3 months ago now. So we are quite new at law, and my business partner has launched a couple successful businesses before. This is my first time trying something entrepreneurial.
okay. And do you have a team yet?
So it's just the two of us. Our
Okay.
business model is predicated. We're trying to be an AI native consulting and advisory firm. And what that means is if we are successful, we actually don't need to hire a lot of people. So in a typical consulting firm, the ratio from client, you typically tend to have one client per 5 people. We're trying to flip that around where our goal is to have 30 clients per one person. So about 150x more efficient than a traditional consulting firm. And that's largely predicated on not just using AI tools, but being AI native.
Right. Which that in and of itself is, you're right, quite innovative because I think there's a lot of existing firms that have been doing financials and financial forecasting and all those things with manually, and now they're trying to bring AI into it, and you're flipping it on its.
Yeah, beyond that, like almost all of the work that we do is done by AI, where we are almost doing kind of minimal, cosmetic touches at the end, really. We spend most of
Uh-huh.
our time building the technology, and then the technology does the work on behalf of our clients.
And I'm just going to ask you, which is, we don't want to go deep because we want to talk about leadership, but I'm sure that security comes up, right? Because that's a big concern for people. So I'm assuming you've got all those safeguards built into
Yeah,
it.
so there's kind of two types of security. One is where's all my data being stored, et cetera. Like any software technology company, not just any software, any consulting firm, like they want to know that the data is not sitting on some junior analyst laptop sitting in a bar somewhere, right? So we have all of that. All of our data tends to sit on a commercial grade cloud service. The second is where is data being sent for with some of these AI tools. And for that, at least most of our clients haven't cared too much. To the extent that they care, we tend to rely on open source models so that we could, if they care, we don't have to send the data to somewhere to an external model provider. We could theoretically run the model just on our own device.
Mhm.
So it's like almost like running ChatGPT on your own computer rather than going to ChatGPT, which is sending their data to some server somewhere.
Okay. All right. So I'm just trying to think about leadership in terms of how does it really affect where you are at in terms of how you see yourself growing this company?
Sure. So look, for the past few years, or for the past nearly decade, I've been the CEO or CFO of several larger mid-sized organizations, right? The largest of which was $100 million in revenue. So I've been a leader in the traditional sense of where lots of people, lots of money, et cetera. in the context of what we're trying to build now, it's a little bit different because if we're successful, we actually won't be a large company by number of people. So what does leadership mean in a company that, and I'm making this up, imagine you're running a company that has 10 people, but it's generating $100 million of revenue. I don't want to be a leader in that sense. Leadership arises because human beings in large organizations need to organize themselves. If you can't have 5 people in a room together, can all be equals and buddies, right? If you have 1,000 people, you need some sort of structure and some sort of hierarchy, which is why we organize ourselves largely in pyramids in human society. If we are successful at Eagle Rock, we're never going to be a large company in the number of people. And if we're successful, if we're 20 people and generating millions or tens of millions of dollars in revenue, we don't need a leader in the traditional sense. Some people may earn more than others because we own the equity or whatever, but really we can be equals or true partners in the conventional sense where there's not votes. It's just a bunch of guys and gals around a room making decisions together. Again, that is possible when you can fit the number of people in a room. It's not possible when you scale past, I think the magical numbers after about 50, you need to start having hierarchy. And we would aspire to not reach 50.
Interesting. So, in that sense, how do you see yourself, just imagining out, how
Yeah.
do you see yourself running? Would you or your co-founder, or either of you have the title of CEO? Like, who's actually running the operations?
So neither of us have, we're just both partners, and there's no need for us to worry about titles, CEO, CFO,
Right.
because when you're 2 folks and a couple, again, the good news is we are making money. We actually have a fairly good paying client base, even though we're just 3 months in. So we haven't worried too much about titles. I don't know how we'll deal with that in the future. And not speaking for my business partner, I don't think I really care about the title. What I care about is 3 things. From a professional point of view, I like creating value for businesses, right? Whether it's my own business or my clients, I love that gives me joy. So I want to be focused on doing that day to day. Number 2, I like doing math things. So I want to always be doing mathy things. And number 3, I like building things. So I want to be building things. Whatever title allows me to do that and whatever role allows me to do that would be an awesome role for me, regardless of the title.
I love that. All right. So, what's one unconventional habit or mindset shift that's helped you grow your business?
It's what I call an experiment driven approach. Going back to what I said a few minutes ago, a lot of leaders think about making big bet the farm decisions, grand strategic plans, right? And they want to be right when they make decisions. And most companies, when they make a bet, they want to be right. And that's not the way I think about it. I think about it as every bet has a strong chance of being wrong. So let's take a lot of small bets, figure out which ones work, and then put the gas on those. And the ones that don't work, shut them down quickly. And what that means is we're taking 100 small bets at a time, and that's okay. So, for example, at our business, we've got paying clients, but we haven't figured out exactly the perfect business model. So, we're pursuing basically 5 or 6 different business models simultaneously. And we're making money on all of them, but we don't know which one is the right one yet to push the gas on. And that's okay. So, we are juggling 6 balls. At some point, 1 or 2 of them will be better balls. And we're okay if 4 of them were stupid ideas. There's
Wow.
no ego, and it doesn't matter if all 4 of the ideas that fail are mine. That's okay. We're taking a very experiment driven approach because he's an engineer, I'm a scientist by training. You learn in science by running experiments. Most experiments do not what's called invalidate the null hypothesis, meaning they were stupid experiments to run in the first place. They didn't tell you anything new.
Okay. I think that in and of itself is very interesting. And then talk to me a little bit about, have the two of you had to do any work in your relationship? Like, for instance, how did you decide who was going to do what and what decisions each of you were going to make on your own and what you make together?
Sure. It's funny that you asked that because we literally had a discussion about this last night. So, look, we started this company 3 months ago. Both of us were initially doing everything, and we periodically checked in with each other. And we all both have strengths and weaknesses, different anxieties in life, whatever, right? I forget which one of it was us, but like one of us texted the other one yesterday saying, "Hey, we've realized that like one person is doing task A and one person is doing task B, whereas 3 months ago when we started, everyone was doing everything." And we just checked in with each other, had a conversation for half an hour last night. Are we fine that you are the specialist in A and that I'm the specialist in B? And we were fine with it. But we're just periodically just communicating with each other again. I at least am new to this. So we are just trying to communicate with each other to make sure that we are hitting each other's goals and working together effectively. For example, I'm spending a lot of my time doing technology and coding right now. I like that. But I knew, for example, my business partner wanted to spend a little bit more time in coding. So we are making sure that he is going to spend a little bit more time doing that so he can build that skill set up for his own joy and purpose and skills. And that means I'm going to allocate a little bit more of my time to doing marketing work, which I have not done a lot of work on yet.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think it sounds like at least so far you picked the right partner.
Yeah, again, we're both new to this. We've known each other for a decade because we went to business school together, but it's our first time working together. There's lots of things we are going to struggle with. For example, we just drafted our partnership agreement this morning, 3 months later, just to have something in paper about how money moves and stuff. But we intentionally made it like a very short document because we didn't want to worry about what fights we could get into in 3 years or a year from now. Let's figure out we were saying like the future's unpredictable. If we start to get it, we're adults. We'll deal with this and put it in paper, the complex parts of this a year from now or 5 years from now as those issues arise, rather than trying to preempt every personality problem or fight we could get into, which is, it sounds very cool from an intellectual perspective. There's no point spending a week papering up like some weird edge case scenario in a 100-page legal contract.
Okay. Although the only thing I will say, just again, from
When
what
it gets bad, you should prepare for the future. I get it, like technically, but
3 months in, I think you're fine. I just think
yeah.
the only thing that I heard that I was like, you might want to just get ahead of is the part about we'll deal with issues as they come up.
I know that's bad practice. I do genuinely, but I would love to deal with that. Maybe not 5 years from now, a year from now, when we know what I call, are we going to survive the
Yeah.
month, right?
Yeah. I mean, and that I 100% agree, right? There is a part of it that is overkill and getting ready to get ready. You're only 3 months in. You got to figure some stuff out. So I get that. Makes sense. So, in this whole thing, I know that you're at the beginning of this, but you've also had some very successful ventures that you've been a part of. And I even think honestly, just being having an MBA from Harvard, right? That's prestigious in and of itself. So, if you're going to feel imposter syndrome at this point, where would it come up for you? And then when it comes up, how do you get yourself back to center?
Sure. So imposter syndrome is funny. People ask me that often. Here's what I'll say. I know there's a few things I'm really good at and differentiated at. I tend to be very calm. I tend to be very optimistic, and I tend to be very good at math. Those are my kind of if somebody asks you what your spikes are in an interview, I'm calm, I'm optimistic, and I'm good at math. Those are the three things that I think I'm differentiated on. Conversely, imposter syndrome, a few things, right? Number one is I've never started a business before. So this is new, and all of the fancy stuff that I've done in the past is less relevant to this current situation. Number two, a lot of what we're doing today is leveraging AI. And no matter what anybody tells you, no one is truly an expert at AI. So we're better than most and we are relative experts, but are we absolute experts? No. So I constantly have to be careful in telling my clients that, like, we are relative experts and I want to make sure that I don't oversell what we do or how good we are. I think we're good, but I also want to be careful of not overselling it. Conversely, by the way, that's the funny story is a lot of people, at least in the context of AI, they're overselling themselves. One of our prospective clients asked us, can you build a self-learning AI? And the math part of my brain kicked in and said the answer is no. And not because we're bad at it, but there's actually some very fundamental math reasons why you can't build a self-learning AI in their context. And I was like, anybody who's telling you otherwise is just lying to you. In your business, you cannot build a self-learning AI for some very complicated, actually not complicated, but for some very big math reasons.
That's very funny. You know what it makes me think of? This is such a random thing to say, but any dog trainer that says to you that they can train your animal absolutely, they're animals. And I remember we don't currently have a dog, but when we had a dog and having this conversation with the dog trainer, I can train you, and most of the time you have control over your dog. But if a squirrel comes up and starts taunting your dog, will you 100% have control over that dog? The answer is no. And anybody that tells you that you can is actually not telling you the truth.
Yeah. And unfortunately, in the era of it, again, we are AI native. A lot of our work deals with AI in some way, shape, or form, both internally and externally. We're constantly just running into people who are overselling what AI can do. And again, we believe AI can do everything, but like a lot of the people that are doing it, it's frustrating because they have no idea how the technology works underlying or what it, there's certain things that ChatGPT can do, there's certain things it can't. Or ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever, pick your favorite AI. And they can do some extraordinary things. They can make good judgment, but can they self-learn? No. The answer is actually no. Not yet. Not that version of the technology. There's other variants that are capable of self-learning, but not what most people think about as AI.
Right. Yeah. It's technical, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, basically, like the quick thing is AI needs two things to be able to learn. One is data, and you need lots of data. And number two is you need a model that can edit itself. When you're doing a general purpose model like ChatGPT, there's lots of data. But however, if I was building an AI, let's say on the artwork in your background, it looks like there's 10 pieces there. There's not enough data for the AI to get better and better on 10 data points. And yeah, the second is it needs to be able to edit its own code. And like right now, the AI models can't do that. They can build the code for the next generation of tools, but they can't edit their own code.
Right, without human.
It's like they could break themselves, right? Like the analogy is you could be the greatest surgeon in the world, but you can't replace out your own heart because you happen to be like living and you need to be alive when you're doing the surgery.
There is that. Wow. Okay. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Believe it or not, Nick, those were all the questions that I had for you today.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We were efficient. Not only were we interesting, but we were also efficient.
That is awesome. I love efficiency. That's probably my favorite E word.
There you go. Me too. All right, guests, thank you. Listeners, thank you so much for listening. Eagle Rock Financial Services, $5 to $25 million companies. You'll be able to look in the show notes and find Nick's contact information. Since now he's going to be working on marketing, you're going to be able to find him really easily. And I, again, am Kim Miller-Hershon, Kim Miller-Hershon Coaching and Consulting. You've been listening to Unconventional Wisdom about conventional wisdom. Two asks from my end. One is sign up for the newsletter. It comes once a week and people are enjoying it. It's short. It's just got one thing in it. So do that. And it always has a style picture. And then the second one is we have some free webinars coming up. So check out if you want to be able to get a little bit more info from me about efficiency and a whole variety of other shoulds and shouldn'ts around growing your business and being a leader, sign up for the webinar. And also you'll have a chance to talk to me too. So if you want to ask me any questions about you or your business, happy to answer those. So this is Kim Miller-Hershon, Kim Miller-Hershon Coaching and Consulting. Go out there and be a better human.
Where cliches